morning. Hey, I'm Steve Weber. Welcome to the American Gumption Morning Show. Today is Thursday, June 3rd, and we have a guest coming back for the second time. Shannie Alvarez was here 2 weeks ago, and she returns. And 2 weeks ago, we talked about her book, We Are One. And at the very end of the show, I said, "Hey, what's with the crazy book cover?" And we didn't have time to get into it, so we're gonna. It's actually worth the whole show to talk about the book cover, and it'll go deeper into the book, the meaning of the book, and her story. So that's coming up in just a few minutes. I'm going to go ahead and do a monologue first. I'm going to do the name of my monologue is Two Halves, and it really is picking up on Shannie's idea of what the book is about. So I don't want to be stealing any of her thunder, but I'm going to go ahead and give some ideas on how two halves make up a whole. And so I'll just give you my interpretation, and then that'll lead into some of the things that Shannie's going to talk about today. So that's coming up in just a couple minutes, and we'll have Shannie join us at about 15 past the hour. Alrighty, so let me tell you what's happening tomorrow. I have Gwen Peterson also returning to the show. She was here about a month ago, and when she first visited us, she talked about the Spiritual Communities Network. And I have since joined the network, and Shannie is a member of the network. And in fact, I am broadcasting on the Spiritual Communities Network page today, first time. So if anybody's tuning in and watching, this is my first show that I'm doing broadcasting with that community, because we're interviewing a member, and then tomorrow we're going to do another show because we're interviewing the founder of Spiritual Communities Network. And Gwen and I are going to talk about her particular brand, insights and illuminations, and the way she's been working with people for the last 2 decades, helping people find their purpose and get more meaning in their life. So, and then about 10 years after that began, she started Spiritual Communities Network. And that's mostly what we talked about 2 weeks ago, or a month ago when she was here. So, alrighty, very good. All right, so let me go ahead and jump into today's monologue. And again, I'm calling it Two Halves. And I've got a slideshow prepared. So I'll just go ahead and just bring that up and share that with you, and just go through some slides that I prepared, and hopefully it'll all make sense. All righty. So two halves. Yeah. And again, now here is, let me turn off this one banner there. There we go. So the brain, there it is, the brain, two hemispheres of the brain, the right and the left. And look at the fancy coloring of the brain here. You see this particular view has the brain, the front of it at the lower portion, the lower left portion. And so we have the left hemisphere being kind of that creative side. And then the right hemisphere is the logical side. And together they're independent, they're separate, and yet they work together. So it's all one whole. And so that's when I say two halves, that's kind of the classic thinking of what that would be. All righty, now, let's see, there we go. So now this view here kind of turns things around. So now you have the front of the brain. We're looking down from the top. The front of the brain is at the top of the screen, and you can see the right side again is that logical. There it is, ones and twos, and it's all like bits and bytes. And then over on the left side is kind of that psychedelic. It's the tie-dyed look. It's the creative. And so again, here this screen just shows you that the logical is on that right side, and then over on the left side is the creative half. And I think the important thing to think about is that they work independent. And yet they complement, and they support each other. All righty. Now, here is man and woman, and they are obviously the yin and the yang, and they also are complementary, and they're independent, and yet they come together to form a union. And within the brain, same kind of a thing. We have, the two halves. And so men and women complementary. And then here is good and evil. And you can see that, this is just sort of so rather than being judgmental about good and evil, like, oh, good, bad, what if it's just like, what if they're just contrast? Let's just think about them as contrasting to each other. And without seeing both sides, we can't distinguish one from the other. And so rather than being real judgmental on them, let's just think about them as being contrast. And I think this is like the idea that Chaney's going to bring up with us. And again, I'm not trying to steal her thunder, but I'm just giving my interpretation of what, this idea that two halves make up the whole. All righty. Now here you see, here it looks like probably a grandfather teaching his grandson. It looks like they got like some kind of a circuit board, and he's showing he's showing them. And now this is a contrast between teaching and experiencing. And how do we learn? We learn by both of those things. The grandfather is teaching and instructing, and yet the young boy is experiencing and actually trying things and getting his hands dirty with messing around with it, understanding it. And so it's like that we need experiences in order to learn. We can't just learn by someone explaining to us, and we don't want that. And again, I know this is some of the things that Chaney's going to talk about. All righty. So now, I'm losing. There we go. So here I'm just going to summarize, and I've got 9 different ideas. So each half is independent from each other, and each half has a purpose or a specialty. So it's not like one is good and one is bad, or one is better than the other. They just each have their own purpose, their own unique purpose, and their own unique specialty. And they are complementary to each other. That's the yin and the yang, and they complement, they support each other. And together they make that whole. They need or thrive with each other. They need or thrive with each other, right? If you only had half a brain, you wouldn't be very functional. You wouldn't be able to function. And in relationships, right? If people complement each other and they can thrive, they can be stronger together in unison. And they create contrast for each other. They do definitely create contrast. So again, I'm going to say that contrast, let's not be judgmental. Let's just accept that contrast is contrast. All righty. And then neither side is, or neither half is good or bad. So we're not judging it. We're just saying that they're different. They have their specialty. Then they create that contrast. And contrast is a good thing. It's a healthy thing. It's normal. And finally, the idea would be to complement and not compete with each other. All righty. So that's, that's really I think all I really wanted to say about this. I'm going to go back and just sort of show that brain one last time. Whoops, where we are. There you go. There's that. I like this little map here. It just shows the brain and like the psychedelic over on the left, the creative side, and then the bits and bytes and the logical side over on the right side. And of course, one side is considered more of the male dominant, and one is considered more of the female. But I think that together it's what makes it all work. So alrighty, well that's really it. I'm not gonna say anything more about that. That wraps up my monologue on the two halves. So without further ado, we can welcome Shannie back to the show. There she is.
Hello.
Let's get us here. There we are. Let's get us lined up. How are you doing, Shannie? Welcome back.
Good. Hi, Steve. Thanks for having me back. Yeah. And that was interesting. Yeah, what you said about the brain and the two halves and how they need each other to complement each other and work together. And yeah, that's what I believe too.
And so here, let's do this. Let me do a quick screen share one more time, and I will just show what started this conversation, or what ended our last conversation, is here is the cover of your book, We Are One. And it was at the very end of the show, and we had like a minute left. And I said, Shannie, what's with the crazy hairdos on this man and woman? And you said, oh boy. And we didn't have time to get into that. So that's why we brought you back today. We want to get into that and talk about that. So we will. But before we do that, we talked in depth about your book, We Are One, a couple of weeks ago. For anybody who didn't see it, just give like kind of a quick thumbnail of what it is all about and why you wrote the book.
Well, it wasn't really planned. It wasn't a planned thing. I just started writing. I had some poetry that I was coming up with, and I decided to kind of talk about my journey. And I know I have a little bit of a different perspective on things, and my journey to spirituality, basically, and trying to understand who is God, what is my purpose, all of those big questions. Of course, I went to religion. And at that time, I didn't really understand anything about religion. I just sort of thought that it was a lot simpler than it was. And I thought there was just the one idea out there and that was about it. And knowing, learning anyways that Christianity was not the only religion, and being confused about a lot of different thoughts out there, and from hearing a lot of different ideas from a lot of different religions, I eventually decided to pursue things from a Jewish perspective, because I do believe in Jesus. I believe in the things that he says, but I really wanted to understand who he was as a person when he was walking around on earth. So I thought, well, Jesus is Jewish. What is Jewish? I'm trying to understand what Jewish is from people who don't understand what Jewish is. And because of that, I believe a lot of the translation is lost, about how we're understanding him. And so that's when I wandered off to a synagogue and learned things from a different perspective. And that really complemented my own perspectives, and that's kind of what I speak about now, and that's kind of what it's evolved out of the book We Are One, that we are all interconnected. We all have our own specific journeys that are unique to ourselves. That is our DNA. The only thing that we can do is be honest about who we are. God doesn't want to change who we are, that's who we are, and let that light shine, but we also need the other, because that's the whole, that's the whole thing is about love. Try to understand God. The way you understand God is through love. What you end up learning is love. And so now you love the other, and loving the other, you find yourself in the other, and you find a bigger self, because that perspective is always going to enhance your perspective. As long as we can learn to come together and respect each other for our different way of coming here, then we can see how we complement each other, just like the brain that you had mentioned. And so that's the thought that's kind of evolved out of We Are One. I didn't realize that wasn't my intention when I started writing it. My intention was to just kind of talk about my story. I had just gone through a really bad breakup, and it was kind of, again, finding myself, who I am, my voice, and it was a little bit of a vent for me. And when I brought it to a publisher, I thought it was finished. And as it was going through the editing phase, I just kept on adding more and more to it. And actually, I published it, and I keep on adding even more. My blog is just a runoff on it. It's a constant topic for me. It's so deep. Love is deep. That's what God is trying to have us understand. And he wants us, and I think the next level is understanding it through experiencing love. This is, what you were saying, so that's kind of the little clip of the book, I guess.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you for kind of recapping what we spent, a good 45 minutes talking about, went into pretty deep detail with it. The book is called We Are One, and you can go to ShannieAlvarez.com, and her blog is really a continuation of the book because you are adding to it, you're learning. It wasn't like you wrote the book and it's like done. It's like, it was really kind of like the opening, I don't want to say the opening salvo, but it was this, it is what it is, and yet the story continues because it is a deep story. It's not something that we just instantly figure out. My journey has been about a 10-year journey since I went, oh my gosh, things aren't the way I've always thought they were. And once you open that can of worms, you don't just like unpack and unravel all of the history and suddenly come to a new conclusion. You come to new conclusions, but they continue to evolve and mature, and you get more contrast, you get more experiences, and you keep growing and evolving. I want to add a little bit, just a little tiny bit of context to it. You were, I guess you were raised Christian, although you didn't have a strong it wasn't like you were church going people, that you were really part of one particular, denomination. And then you became a young adult, and you had some, challenges in terms of like, what is the meaning of it? And you started going around to different Christian churches, thinking that initially like, okay, well, this is going to be the answer. And it's like, well, that's not quite the answer, but maybe this one's the answer. And then the next one. And you I don't know how long it took, maybe a few years, you played around with that. And then you ended up, actually getting involved with a synagogue, and, thinking that, you're, becoming, converting to Judaism. And yet you ultimately thought, well, that's not, the path that I'm going to go. But you spent like, a couple decades like researching this. So it wasn't like it was just like somebody who dabbled in it. You like went deep in there, didn't you?
I did go deep. It's something that I'm not settled in. I think all of us really are the same. It's just, for me, I was pretty, I don't know. I really determined to try and find some answers, and I just don't stop. I guess a lot of people just sort of give up. It's like, okay, well, I don't agree with this, so that's it. And now I'm just gonna, put that on a shelf and not worry about it anymore. But I kind of think that that's the darkness. That's not like it kind of convinces us to not really look into things a little bit more deeper. And it's also sort of the past too, that just sort of said, don't question anything, just believe, if that pastor is telling you that, then what he says, he's got the credentials, that must be right. And in his eyes, it is right from his books and from his perspective, because he's only looking at a certain amount of things, but the more that you open up that book, and the more that perspective ends up being bigger and adding more understanding to what you're trying to understand. For me, I just really needed it. As you know, Steve, I had dark depression, and I was not a happy camper. And so this was healing for me. The more I found answers, the more I had something to believe in, the more hope I had. And so for me, this was like a lifeline for me. I needed this. It fed me. I needed to know the truth, about things. And the truth is something that we're always learning, because we're living in a place that's that's full of good and bad, and it's chaos right now. But that doesn't mean that we just give up on everything. It means that we have to believe in what is good and try to bring as much of that goodness into the world so that other people can have hope in it and believe in it. We're all the same. We're all created by the same God. We just, we've lost our focus. A lot of us of what really, really matters about living in life and having a good life. And yeah.
The inspiration for my monologue really was the idea that you are talking about, like, two halves. You were talking about like contrast. You're talking about men and women complementing each other, religions, Jews and Gentiles, being kind of like, a compliment. I never heard anybody say that until you said it. And it's just interesting. So I think what we could do, if it's okay, is let's go ahead and let's describe what that crazy hairdo is all about. Because I said to you, Shannie, what's with the crazy hairdo? It looks like trees and birds are flying around out of the trees, and they don't have hair. They have trees growing out of their heads. So how did this cover come to be? What happened?
Well, I was lucky enough to actually find this photo for free, and I just love it. A lot of the stuff that I talk about is about the beginning, because if we know and understand how things were in the beginning, and we can believe in a beginning, then we can kind of grow from there and see how we've evolved. Like look at things from the very beginning and how it started. And so if you open up the Bible in Genesis, it talks about there being a Garden of Eden and how it was this perfect, beautiful place. There were two trees there. There was the tree of life, and then there was a tree of knowledge of good and evil. And what I believe is that, the Bible is also written poetically. And I mean, we can't say it means this or it means that. Some of the things that are just kind of open to interpretation. And that's why religion kind of got, it gets a little screwy, especially when we're not talking with each other. And some of the things isn't making sense. And even for me, and a lot of the things that I say, I'm not really completely, nobody really challenges my thought, because the thought is already out there. People agree with the stuff that I'm saying, especially the Jews. The Jews are really wrapped up in this story of Adam and Eve, and they've been spending all of this time also, within themselves, trying to figure out what God was trying to tell us through this story. I'm still, learning with them and trying to understand, how different it is that I see things compared to them. But what I believe is that they are actually the two trees. And Adam, we are created in the image of God, and that's just a big, question mark. What is God? Who is God? What does that mean? Well, and then out of, God creates Adam, and then out of Adam, because he says, it's not good for man to be alone, he creates a woman. But he created a woman out of Adam. They're still one, but they're just two mirroring each other, to complement each other. And so through my own poetry and writing, just sort of inspired by that story, I believe that the woman is the tree of knowledge of good and evil, and he represents life. That's how I believe God separated us, man and woman. And so ideally, what I believe that ideally at the heart of who we are in our truest form, in our truest nature, I am looking to see God in the man, and the man is looking to see God in the woman. And the more that we see God in each other, the more, and through our love, the more that we're supposed to be bringing that goodness, that God, out of each other. We're supposed to be complementing each other, and it's just a wheel that's supposed to be going in a positive direction of us loving one another and bringing more and more of God out in each other and into this world. That is what I believe is happening. But there's things that complicate that, obviously, because that didn't happen so easily. We're still evolving. So I believe in the garden we were created on the 6th day, and I still believe this is the 6th day. It's just taking us a history of time to understand who we truly are, to say, okay, this day is over. Now we understand who we are. We can move into the 7th day and be married with God on that beautiful day of rest, the Sabbath, and be with one another and just enjoy creation and sit back, like God says, and just enjoy what we've created, this beautiful Garden of Eden. So we're still in that process. It's still the 6th day, and we've messed up everything. We completely destroyed this Garden of Eden, and now we're in this phase that I believe, because I believe that the sun is coming down on this day. We're near the end of the day. As the sun comes down on a day, it's getting darker. So I believe the light of God is actually, it's starting to be seen more as God is coming into the world, as we're seeing God more in the world. We're seeing it in each other. The light is now being also illuminated by all of the chaos and darkness in the world. God uses our physical, everything that's physical, to give us an image, of how it is. Everything that's physical is really an image of how it is in the spiritual world. Everything is created here for us to understand who we truly are as spiritual beings. This is what I believe.
Let me jump in here. There's an awful lot there, so we'll kind of maybe back up a little bit and take one piece at a time. Obviously, the story of Adam and Eve, the first story in the Bible, open to interpretation for millennium, right? So 2,000 years, people longer than that. These stories have been going on. Somewhere along the line, there were people who were inspired. They were connected to source, and they wrote these stories down. And of course, though, then it gets put into what's called the Bible as we know it. And of course, that becomes kind of a loaded emotional idea, because then it's connected to the different religions, and people have been going to wars for centuries over I'm right and you're wrong, types of things. And but separating all of that, this original story of Adam and Eve is what you're really starting with. And you said that the Jews are much more tuned into the story than the Christians. I'm guessing you just experienced that, you just sort of somehow, like, light bulb went off and you went, oh my gosh.
Everything that I was understanding outside of the Jewish people, I mean, it's just like the man and the woman. How much can I understand on my own without a man? We need each other. Like, let's face it. To have the best relationship, we would do the best if we actually work together in love, in unison, and did life like that. That's the way it's supposed to be. Man and a woman supposed to get married. You have children, and you have this beautiful life where you've created that with each other. You need each other to do that. And it's the same thing, I believe, with the Jews and the Gentiles. It's just on a bigger scale, but it's the same thing. I look at them as the man, and they, well, I don't know if they're looking at us as the woman. I think this is sort of a new idea for them as well, but they know that, it's really Jews and Gentiles. They know that they're here to speak to to be a light to the nations. This is what they know about themselves, but they're also trying to learn who they are. Are we expecting them to be perfect? They are aware of all of the mistakes that they've done in the past, just as the Gentiles, all the oodles of mistakes we've done in us trying to understand who we are, But at the end of the day, we can say, okay, now we know who we are. We want to be good, and we know who we are in ourselves. Now the next phase is to learn who the other is, because the Jews are, in the end, the Jews are a complement, and we complement them as well. So it's not to say that there's one religion that's better than the other, like you had mentioned, the brain, how it works. It's not one side is better than the other because one side's creative, then that's better than the side that's logical. No, it's about balance and working with each other, for the gifts that you have, to bring that all to the table. And I feel like part of the reason why, there's just so many things that have complicated us in our blindness, but religion has blinded us, because religion does not want to look outside of the box, and the religion always says that their religion is the right way. And what they're trying to do, because it's kind of a scary feeling to go outside of yourself. You don't want to lose yourself. So what typically people try to do is they try to make people like themselves. They don't want to appreciate what's different, and just let our differences be there. Anything that's not God, it will fall away. We just have to act in respect and love with one another, and all of that bad stuff goes away. It's us continuing the dysfunction by not allowing God to be in the world, by not respecting and loving one another. But yeah, so
let me jump in. You talked about the light and the darkness and the end of the sixth day. Obviously, the day is just a metaphor for a period of time. We're living, many will acknowledge that we're living in a very exciting time, in that all of the systems of the last 100 years that allowed us to be able to communicate with each other. You're in Canada. People, we can talk like this to people from all over the world. We are sharing ideas that in the older days would have been only available in books. And then we didn't even have, it's 400 years ago or thereabouts when the printing press was first invented. Before that, any kind of scriptures and Bibles were basically had to be handwritten, and they were only located in churches or synagogues. They weren't, it wasn't like human beings had opportunities to have access to the knowledge and then have access to other people to share and talk about these things. So then, less than 100 years ago, airplanes come about, radio comes about, we start communicating, we're talking, and then the internet starts like roughly 20 plus years ago. And suddenly, like, every kind of information that we could possibly want is available to us. And so there's like this overload of like new ideas and communications. And right at the moment, you see a lot of people hunkering down and like saying, no, this is the right way to go. No, this is the right way to go. And then, people wanting to, cancel opinions and voices that they don't even like out of the conversation. And so it is chaos. It is like a dark time. And yet it's an exciting time because, if you were born 2 generations ago, you couldn't even, you didn't even have access to 99% of what, you and I are just talking about. And we can just have conversations with hundreds of people that are aware of this, and the religions, and I'm sorry, I'm kind of monopolizing here a little bit, but the religions, kind of like, that was like all people knew. I grew up in Catholic training, and I didn't understand what the difference between the other Christian religions were, and so anyway, I just think it's very interesting time that we're in, and it's very interesting that you did this deep dive into it. It's a little unusual. You're you're not the average person who goes, oh, I'm going to figure this out because it
wasn't even intentional, though. It's not like it's intentional, but it's just like you, Steve. We're believers, and we believe in goodness. And we're just trying to find it, and this is what happens. Doors start opening, we really, really put God in a small little box, there's so much that we really need to start having faith in ourselves, in God, in miracles, in big things, because the darkness is not powerful. God is powerful, and I just I really feel like a lot of us are really feeling it, and I think a lot of that is because of what you said, and it's biblical as well. In the end of days, knowledge will increase. That is how it is. We're all of us are all saying like, wow. The government's been telling us this about our food, but this is actually what we're eating, and labels are being mismarketed. I mean, just everything has, all of the things that they've been fooling us with all of this time, we're all now, realizing, that a lot of this information has not been very good, trustable information. So now we're all starting to question things from every perspective, from everything, because everything, in a way, it's not like a lot of times too, it might have even been deliberate. It's just in ignorance, and ignorance also because nobody's talking with each other, so that also keeps us in the darkness. And now because everything is on the internet, now it's not so scary. Like it might have been scary for me to walk into a synagogue, which it was, but how easy it is now for you to go on Chabad.org and hear what the Jewish people are saying right now, and we can easily, like, and I don't see why we shouldn't start talking with each other and in respect and love, and try to understand one another. That's when we're really going to be bringing God into this world, and that's what's supposed to be happening. So
we were ignorant in the sense that we just didn't know. We didn't have the information. Now all of a sudden we do have information, and to what you were saying, we are looking at the people who have been the gatekeepers of the information and sharing it with us. And we're starting to question and say, well, wait a minute, is that true? Is that true? And it's now gotten to the point where, there's so much information out there that it's very difficult to believe, or it's very difficult to know what to believe. And it's almost like, the default has to be, well, I'm not sure if this is true or not. And you have to become discerning and thinking and educating ourselves on the things that we want. And So, but then back to so we're in this state of confusion. But something that we could probably agree on, or at least you and I can agree on, is that you said we're meant to experience love, and love can't be taught. Love is not one of those things that you can say, well, this is like, this is what love is, and you go, oh, okay, I know it. You can only know love when you experience it, and we can only experience it by being loving. And so, this is the challenge. This is what we want to do. This is what we. It's kind of like that's where we're headed. How do we do that?
So, okay, if I can kind of just sum it all up as quickly as I can, it's we should always be very busy. We should be very busy with things that typically, we decide to be very busy in things that are actually not growing us. We really should be trying to figure out who we are, our true purpose. Everybody should be asking themselves that question, because you will find God if you start asking those big questions. God created man. So he created Adam, and then out of Adam, he created Eve. But each of us, and within our own selves, has a man-woman self, which I believe you alluded to with the brain. There's the two hemispheres there, which I actually talk about as well quite often, which I sort of feel like the man is the brain and the woman is the heart. She's the feeling, intuitive one, and he's the brain, like a computer. He has to have a pathway, like 1 + 1 = 2. Love for him has to be 1 + 1 = 2. If I come home every day after work and give you a kiss on the lips and ask you how your day is, then I will have a good marriage with you. There has to be some sort of recipe, and the woman is more, about the feeling and of course, do I really have to explain that? So even within ourselves, we have a fight within ourselves, because what happened in the garden when sin entered, which that's another story for another episode, but that created enmity, is the word that the Bible uses, between the man and the woman. So what I believe, because I believe the woman is in the represented by the tree of knowledge of good and evil, and he was representing the life, eternal life, as in the image of God, eternal life. Well, I believe that it was her decision, because she's the tree of knowledge of good and evil. Adam trusted her when it came to that decision. Are we going to do this? And she says, well, yeah, I think it'll be okay. We can do this. It'll be fine. And he trusted her because she was the one that was knowledge of good and evil. He didn't have that. So he says, okay, I am trusting you. And she screwed up. So that right there, boom, I don't trust you. They don't trust each other, and that is going on within ourselves. It's going on between the man and the woman, because they're all reflections. We need to understand ourselves first. So we really need to sit in a room and get to know God, and when we start feeling like we got a pretty good handle on ourselves, then we're going to be able to see God in each other, and I mean, each man and each woman can even be a little bit more male, can be a little more female, but really we have to understand that balance within ourselves, and then be able to respect it within each other. And then as a final, worldly thing, we're going to see that within each other in the man and the woman, in the Jews and the Gentiles, which I believe they're like the brain. And again, we're the feeling heart, but, in the end, we're God's bride. We are all God's bride. The ones that are trying to understand God are God's bride. And how that happens, because we have a man and a woman, Well, you remember in the garden, Adam and Eve are one. Out of Adam came Eve. Well, at the end of the day, when you're in love with somebody, you become the other. So I also see that as also happening in this world at the end of the day, where now we identify with ourselves, but we also identify with our other self. Mm-hmm. So we become the other. So the man becomes the woman, and the woman becomes the man, and it's interchangeable. We're one. We're all one with God, with ourselves, and it's all love. It's just this big, huge love fest. And so what happens when we make love like that? Well, that's what we do. We're love makers. Like we're making love to each other. That's what we do. And that's how we bring God into this world. So what happens when you make love to somebody? You have a baby, and that spirit is born, the Spirit of God. So that's my vision and story for, the way I see it. That's that I went a little bit further than the way it's described in the book, but that's what's evolved. And there's lots of, because it's such a deep thought, there's lots to talk about, in between, but that's really, just kind of the basics of the way I see things, and how the world is supposed to come together.
So bringing it back to the cover, we are one. This is Shannie's book. And when I said, what's the crazy hairdo? It's really those, it's kind of a symbolism for Adam and Eve, or for man and woman. And then there's the trees, the two trees, and the idea that, separation occurred, and yet we're at a time period where we're coming back together. We have the opportunity to come back together, and love is really what, is the answer and can bring us all back together. It's a great topic, or it's a challenging thing, because I don't feel like this is like a religious conversation. This is a human conversation that we're having. We're talking about some of the the biblical that are traditionally connected with religions, and yet these are ancient texts. These are like what the people who were on earth centuries ago were the lessons they were learning when they were connecting to source energy. And if we believe, as I do, that we are all source energy, we are all that God to begin with, and then we incarnate, we come back to earth, and we live many lifetimes. This is like kind of a new topic for me. This is not something that I was taught to believe. I'm going to throw a couple of things out, a couple of stories, and then I'll let you pick it up from there. But I had my Akashic.
No, I love it. Keep talking. Tell me. Yeah.
I had my Akashic record reading done, and I shared that story. And like one of the things that my soul had been carrying for.
Can I butt in for just 2 seconds?
Yeah,
what is that kind of a reading?
Oh, so the Akashic Records is where it's like kind of the Library of Congress for all your soul records, for all your eternity of coming to coming to earth and not coming to earth. It's your soul record. So there are people who have the ability to access this, and I gave permission to one of these people, and this person went in and accessed it and got a download and shared with me what it was. And so I won't go through that. That story's out there. It's been broadcast. I that show. But the idea was that 30 lifetimes ago, I was incarnated as a woman, and there was an event that I had been carrying that experience with me in all of the lifetimes since then. And so it was a way of cleaning it up. But the idea that I was a woman completely blew my mind, right? And I'm cool with that, because that's really the yin and the yang. That's the energy. That's the two halves. And there's no reason why, if we're going to come back to earth, that we have to come back always as a man or always as a woman, right? Because we are both those. We are both that from that source energy. On a more 3D level, in terms of what's been going on in my own life, is 10 years ago, I was learning about my own journey and my own spiritual awakening. And I had a friend, a coach, a mentor, and she would say, I don't care what you think. I want to know what you feel. And this was the most foreign idea to me, because I was raised in, the idea of masculinity and don't trust your feelings, and feelings are a sign of weakness for men. And, thinking was, and so I was like kind of stooped in that kind of belief. And those were the underlying programs that were running my life. And I didn't even realize it. And I was like, I remember thinking she was from outer space, saying, like, I don't care what you think. I want to know what you feel. And I was like, what does it matter what I feel? It only matters what I think. Well, I've kind of done like almost a 180 since then, in terms of being able to connect with my feelings and kind of crack that nut open that had been really solidly closed. And but all of my language, I started like becoming aware of it. And so as I communicate with people, I want to use language that isn't just all thinking language, but is feeling language. And then in order to do that, you actually have to feel. And so the point I guess I would like to say is that we are both male and female energies. We are both heart and we are both brain. We are both right hemisphere and left hemisphere. And then we are living this particular lifetime in one of those roles in which society tells us we want to go and be stronger in that role, and this is what you're supposed to do. And then we grow up believing that, and then but yet there's that contrast that you talked about, where that like inner battle, like, well, wait a minute, I'm both. So anyway, that's all.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting. It's interesting for me to hear the struggle a man has within themselves to understand their female self, and I think that is a big battle for a man, because it's been so suppressed by society as well, that a man isn't supposed to be feeling and identifying in that sort of way. And yeah, so I mean, that is a pretty big breakthrough, to have that. And then I didn't
want to hijack your idea, but I just wanted to share that, because this is the battle. Men have their like things that they grew up with, being told this is the way you behave, and then we want to be good little boys, right? We want to behave like we're supposed to behave, and yet it's confusing out there. And now there's all this talk of the divine feminine, and just recently I started like, well, what? I don't even understand what that is, and then I started looking it up, and really there's a divine masculine too, right? So it's a balance, and but we're becoming aware. This is conversations that never happened as much.
Exactly.
10 years ago, these conversations only took place in kind of quiet places, certainly not publicly on the internet. So we are making progress.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like you said, it's an awareness, and we're all becoming aware. For me, I think my struggle was probably being too overly feeling. I need the grounding of a man, and I don't trust myself, because as much as we can be very female, that the female can be very feeling, and she thinks she intuitively knows something, you can't always go with just intuition, because sometimes your feelings are skewed by by other things that my own perceptions of things that are still in the dark about things. So I'm always going. My resource is always the Bible. That's my foundation. I always sort of bounce my ideas off of the Bible. And then, I'm also listening to what the Jewish people are saying. And that gives me the balance that I need to feel confident in the things that I'm saying, because I mean, I am saying some pretty far out things, I want there to be some sort of foundation to it. And, but really, I mean, the stuff that I'm saying too, and the way that I'm saying it sounds very real. It makes sense. I also I'm a skeptic. And, I had a problem with, religion sort of explaining, things in the way that they'd have it, the way that it happened, or it would happen, or even if you open up the book of Revelation, it's really difficult to think, okay, is there going to be a chariot of horses coming through the sky any minute now, and like, but all of this stuff is imagery. We really, there's a way to understand it all. It's all poetry. And I believe, like even Jesus had said, the reason why he speaks in parables is because you need that spirit, to be able to define the signs and define things in the Bible that we just, you can't look at it in a logical way. There's some things that's just way, way deeper than that. So you need the woman and the man, you need the logic and you need the intuition, but you need to find the balance in the both of them. And that's what we're doing now in the restoration of the world, where the first part is really the awareness, and then it's learning to understand how to balance it all, that's what we need to do. Mm-hmm.
You say that God's love is selfless and divine. When we learn to love the other the same, we become the other. God's love is selfless and divine. When we learn to love the other the same, we become the other. Really, that's what it's all about, is understanding others, understanding the contrast, and not judging the contrast as good or bad, but rather just the contrast. And
mm-hmm.
and knowing that the contrast is complementary, and it allows us to grow and to move more into being that that heaven on earth, that love-filled person that we all strive to be. And that's the challenge, and that's what your life has been about, you struggling with that, trying to find that out. You've obviously you put it down in words in the book. You're here publicly talking about it, so it's growth. And I'm doing the same thing. So
yeah.
Gosh, thank you.
And thank you. That's awesome. Thank you again, Steve, for this opportunity. Yeah.
Let me just show the book one more time. Whoops. There we go. There it is. Shannie Alvarez, We Are One. You can go to ShannieAlvarez.com, and there's links there. You can get her blog, and read what she's, as she's adding to her story. So I'm so grateful that we met and, had a chance to, get to know each other, throughout this experience. And it's been fun, because it's growth for me to have this conversation. This is not a conversation that very many people are willing to have. And I just want to say thank you, and I honor you for stepping forward with it.
Well, thank you, Steve, again. And just to encourage everybody out there that is listening, if you would like a free e-copy of my book, just hop on over to my website and I'll be happy to email you. Just send me your email address through the contact page or whatever, and I can email you a copy. And the other thing I'd like to say is, if you're not Jewish and you're watching this, to also encourage you to start listening to what the Jews are saying, because if you liked what I said today, you'll hear that they're saying pretty much the same thing. So it's really fascinating what's going on in the world. And we really need to remove those stereotypes and you know, just all of, like, everything that you've heard, challenge it. You know, just go out there and you know, learn for yourself, not from what somebody else has always been telling you. Learn for yourself the truth about what it is, and you develop your own judgments on things. So that's my little advice.
Well, thank you. Go to ShannieAlvarez.com, send her a message, and she'll send you a copy of her book, a digital copy of her book. So that's a nice offer. So thank you so much for that. And I'm sure we'll figure out something else to continue this conversation with. You're always welcome to come back and join me. I love these conversations, and I'm grateful to you. So thank you, Shannie.
Oh, thanks so much, Stephen. And it goes both ways.
All righty. Yeah. See you next time.
All righty. Bye-bye.
Wow. Well, that was, you know, it's just interesting because there's different perspectives, and when we actually stop to listen, we can, you know, we can hear and understand and grow. And that's what I love about doing this show, is I get to interview people who have unique perspectives and you know, help me grow. And when I started this show, I said I want to just be the student. I don't want to be the expert on one particular thing. Sure, Gumption is kind of the glue that's holding the show together. But you know, it's really all these different ideas are things that I think if we allow them to at least be considered, you know, then we grow from it. And that's my attitude and my experience with all this new learning and opportunity that comes along. So thank you, Shannie, for joining us today. We appreciate it. One more time, go to her website, ShannieAlvarez.com, and you can message her, and she'll send you a digital copy of her book, We Are One. All righty. Well, that's it. Let's go ahead and just wrap this show up. Tomorrow, Gwen Peterson, the founder of Spiritual Communities Network, will be with us, and we're going to talk about her specific brand, Insights and Illuminations, and we'll get into the work she's doing to help people grow and evolve and be more loving and connected to source energy. All righty. Well, have a great day, everybody. We'll see you here tomorrow. Oops. Oh, wrong one.